Austin Faith Dialogue, a public affairs program at the crossroads of religion and life. A series of programs highlighting the social and cultural...
Hello. Welcome to the Austin Faith Dialogue. My name is Dick Hudson, deacon at St. Louis Catholic Church. I'm your host today. The Austin Faith Dialogue is brought to you through the Austin Area Conference of Churches. In this program today, we will explore the Methodist faith tradition. We will look at the start of the tradition here in Central Texas, how the spark flourished and where it stands today. We will look at the community roles this Christian congregation has chosen to live out the gospel. If we are to turn to the beginning of the Methodist Church here in Austin, we'll have to turn the pages back to the year 1835. During that year, the Methodist societies, with the help of William Travis, petitioned the Methodist Church for missionaries to the greater Austin area. And it started with Reverend John Haney, was appointed to the Texas Nation, the Austin Circuit, by the Methodist Mississippi Conference as Austin's first Methodist pastor. He served Austin and the surrounding towns for the next 2 years. His successors bought land at 4th and Congress, then known as Cedar and Congress, in the year 1845 for a mere $26. And they began to build the original, yes, the first United Methodist Church of Austin. By 1870, specific Methodist churches began to start, which attracted those of Swedish and German nationalities. The church was rooted and on its way. The congregations were made up of pioneers from the East and Northeast, from Tennessee and Kentucky and Alabama, a rugged people with a deep commitment to the Methodist tradition. To help us further discover the past and the presence of the Methodist community, we are pleased to have the Reverend Bobby K. Jones, Senior Associate Pastor at First United Methodist Church, the Reverend Freddie Dixon, Senior Pastor of the Wesley United Methodist Church, and the Reverend Greg Robertson, the Superintendent of the Austin District of the United Methodist Church. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Greg, we've seen a very brief history of the Methodist Church here in Austin. Can you bring us up to date about what the status of the church is here in Austin?
Well, as you would imagine, Dick, the Methodist Church has grown over the centuries, and it now has about about over 21 churches, 22 churches, 25, I believe, here within the city of Austin. And there are about 67 United Methodist churches in the area in which I serve, in the counties in and around Travis County. So it is indeed grown. And we have about 20,000, 22,000, I believe, United Methodists now in these churches served by some 75 pastors.
That is significant in that short 150 years that have gone by since that beginning. Bobby, one of the things that impresses me is the concept of outreach and how outreach is integrated into the Methodist philosophy. Can you help me understand that a little better?
Our founding father, John Wesley, as an Anglican priest in England, never intended to start a separate church, but he began going out to the countryside preaching, and he fervently believed in that time in a gospel of two parts. The first part is the gospel of God's grace given freely to all, and second, the moral ideal which that gospel presents. Wesley said there is no holiness except social holiness, and by that he meant love and service to others. It is from the beginning of the Methodist tradition our obligation and our privilege to be in service to others in ways that we can. And in Austin, this ranges from work camps that many churches in Austin send to all parts of the United States, to many other nations in the world, as well as outreach projects here in Austin. We sponsor a variety of direct services, which we give food, clothing, gasoline, rental assistance to people who walk in off the street and say, we need help and we need it now. And we're seeing more and more families every day in just this type of need.
What are some examples of the work camp? What missions might they take on?
One of our longest standing at First United Methodist Church is the Appalachia Service Project. We just had 30 youth and adults return from Appalachia, where they spent nearly 2 weeks repairing houses. They work in the home of one family that entire period, and not only do they do physical repair, but they establish deep emotional ties and experience a way of life in a way that is just not possible for them here.
Interesting. You don't have to go to Appalachia to recognize that homeless need.
No.
And it seems to me that the Methodist Church here has also taken up that responsibility, taken on a good part of that responsibility here as well, in terms of some of its actions. Freddie, in addition to that, the Austin community has a unique characteristic in the high percentage of college students that are here locally. Those and the concept of who I am, self-improvement, and those kinds of requirements, how do you see the Methodist Church taking on those roles?
You will note that most recently we had a ruling by the Attorney General where we have here in Austin the Wesley Foundation, and the Wesley Foundation has many tentacles which reaches out into the community, and one of the tentacles was a Bible chairs that were located in the local colleges that were here. And in the most recent ruling by the Attorney General, where there must be separation of church and state, they kind of said bye-bye to those chairs that were located at the University of Texas. And the chairs, respectively, had to retreat back and find places within the community where they could locate to continue to deal with those students who were very much interested in wanting to hear the gospel and certainly wanting to go and grow in grace and understanding of who they are and in light of God's love and their responsibility. So we have many Bible chairs, but located in many churches and other locations in the city, and that's one way that we reach out. University Church or First Church has classes specially designed to reach college students, and there are other activities that are geared basically to help facilitate, to help nurture those who are away from home, and even those students who are indigenous here to Austin who still hunger and thirst to learn something about the love of God.
Can you say a little bit more about the Wesley Foundation? I think you just scratched the surface there.
Well, the Wesley Foundation basically attempts to fill a void that we as local churches are not quite able to do. They are able to do coordinating. For example, there is a chaplaincy program at Houston-Tillotson College, which the Wesley Foundation is very much involved in.
Okay.
They are responsible for the salary, responsible for the programmatic thrust of the chaplain who is located at Houston-Tillotson College, which is just one of the many instances which they fund. The Bible chairs or other instances in which they fund. There are a number of other programs that are funded by the Wesley Foundation. There used to be a time when they had a building which was located on Guadalupe, and they decided that they no longer wanted a permanent structure, but rather they would take the money that was used to maintain, operate, etc., that structure, prorate that money out again and use it for more programmatic things that are needed here in the Austin community, which could supplement and further help what local churches are doing.
Okay. it seems to me that the Methodist Church also takes on a responsibility in terms of legislation.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Can you, in what respect do they take up that cudgel?
Oh, I think most recently, last year, we are on the losing end of this particular one. But most recently, back during the session of the legislature, the Methodist Church was at the forefront of the legislation that was not in favor of the gambling that was passed by the rest of the folk here in the state of Texas. And we were very active in that legislation. Our former district superintendent, James Mayfield, and a number of other laypersons, along with other laypersons and clergy from across the state and other judicatory bodies, gathered together to offer up anti-legislation to the Texas legislature, offering up reasons why we should not pass pari-mutuel gambling, etc. here in the state. That's just one area. The area of child care, foster care, etc., or other issues that we speak to before the legislature during various sessions. The Texas Conference of Churches has a legislative arm that speaks to the legislative side, which they are very much abreast of and a part of, and they address those issues. And when they need reinforcement of troops, they call those of us in from around the state to come and testify and to help in the passage of legislation which we feel is detrimental to the welfare, the spiritual welfare of people here in the state of Texas and the nation for all.
You spoke of child care. Does the First United Methodist Church have, how do they see the mission of child care?
We have a preschool program at our church, which we consider it to be very important that the raising of children in an environment not where just religious teaching is done, strictly speaking, but where children are taught to trust and to believe that the adults around them are reliable and trustworthy. We hope that that nurtures the whole child, and that's part of what we do there, and in the past have sponsored Child Incorporated and extended care and other types of community-based services for daycare.
And one of the things that impressed me, which was the way, was it the Westlake area responded to the child care need of college students?
In a couple of churches around the city, they have set up particular programs very inexpensively dealing specifically with the needs of married or single-parent university students.
Okay. Greg, there's it seems as you look at the Methodist Church that not only outreach is integrated and a part of the fiber of the church, but it also facilitates programs that are outside of the scope itself of the Methodist Church. I know you're new to this current area, but have you captured any of that sense in that in your short stay here so far?
Indeed. So, because this is not just simply indigenous to this area, but the United Methodist Church seeks to use its facilities as tools of service and outreach to the community, wherever you might be, whether in San Antonio, where I had been for the last 10 years, or here in Austin. The United Methodist Church is noted for using those facilities, as Bobby Kay described, in community service, child care for college students, or as Freddie described, in service and outreach in the form of meals to those that are hungry and those that are injured in the community. Many other areas, like in hosting AA programs and providing English as a second language service to those that are coming into this country, and many other kinds of avenues. And so it is that I see most churches not providing these facilities as a means of serving itself, but rather of serving God and serving the people, the needs of the people, or putting it in reverse, in serving the needs of the people that are serving God.
I just, if I can just dovetail that to be a little bit more specific, about 16 years ago when I came to Austin, in looking around and Wesley has a unique history of being a part of, I like to call it the birthing and nurturing and giving away process that we do at Wesley. And we do that better because we don't necessarily like to sustain a lot of long ongoing ministry. We like to be on the cutting edge of being innovative and creating something and then saying, hey, this is yours, we're giving this to you, and moving on. For example, Houston Tillotson College, in its inception when it moved from Dallas, it located here in Austin in the basement of Wesley United Methodist Church.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
People didn't know that. Wesley United Methodist Church came out of First United Methodist Church, where Bobby Kay is, in 1865. And we started our own congregation, but we were also located here downtown. I'm giving you that as a little backdrop and a little bit of history. Keeping that tradition in mind, referencing when I said 16 years ago when I came, we were looking for a way to really reach out into the community, to give back to the community a vehicle or an ongoing organization that would basically be able to address a broad range of needs and issues of people in the East Austin community. And so I banded together with a group of people out of Wesley and a number of people throughout the community, and we set a task force, later which developed into a sponsoring committee. We started with a $25,000 proposal that we received from the city of Austin, which they gave to the sponsoring committee. To make a long story short, the Urban League is now located on Interregional I-35 with a brand new facility, and it now has a budget in excess of $1 million. It has around 16 people who are on a permanent staff. It is an ongoing entity, etc. That's just one of the things that we do as Methodists. And that was one of the many things that we gave to the community as a gift, so that a number of needs such as unemployment, such as skill development, such as job bank and referral, these are the kinds of things that the Urban League is able to do. And we would not be able to do that as a church because we don't have the money and the facility and the budget. But here we are able to work with the community, come together, mixing the social and the gospel together, and helping people to self-determine for themselves. And that's what the gospel is all about.
I'd have to agree with you. It really, because that really speaks to the facilitation, really, and living out the gospel itself. Speaking of the gospel and the renewal in the church today, I detect in talking about the Methodist Church, in discussing it with you, a spirit of renewal that's taking place within the church. Bobby Kay, one of those terms used or that we talked about was the idea of walk to Emmaus. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Well, it certainly is one of the symbols of renewal in the United Methodist Church. It's a program, we also call it a short course in Christianity, which packs into a 3-day period 15 lectures on the Christian life. And it's an opportunity for men and women to experience, in a way they seem not to have experienced before, what the grace of God is all about, both in what they hear through the lectures and in what they experience through the love and nurture and care shown to them during that weekend. And they come back, we come back, I came back, not only renewed in my own personal faith journey, but also eager and full of energy to get to work in the church and in the community.
That's an interesting, and I think that byproduct, I've got to share a little bit of my own experience in that. It sounds very similar to Cursillo, which I made in San Francisco in '65, and it was truly a marking in my life. Something that a door closed and a door opened in a fullness and a richness that I had not seen, a commitment that wasn't previously there. Greg, as you look at the church as a whole, what do you feel in that spirit from a superintendent viewpoint?
Well, I feel a strong vitality emerging within the respective congregations where these kinds of programs are evident. I really do. And where they're absent, I sense that there is a sort of a frenzied activity, trying to pursue this and that and the other. And so these kinds of programs, these kinds of signs of vitality that are occurring are very important to the life of the church. I'm reminded of a quote as both Freddie and Bobby Kay were describing, on the one hand, the social dimensions of the gospel, on the other hand, the spiritual expressions of the faith, from a United Methodist, or actually predated the United Methodist Church, but known by many as E. Stanley Jones, a famous missionary to India while he was in this country, said there's a lot of argument going on within the churches as a whole, and specifically the Methodist Church, which is the more appropriate, the social gospel or the personal gospel. And he responded by saying, the social gospel alone is like a body without a soul, a corpse. Mm-hmm. And the spiritual gospel alone, he said, is very much like a soul without a body, a ghost. Said really there's only gospel that has both spiritual and social dimensions to have a whole body. And I think that is still operative within the United Methodist Church, and I hope it would be in the churches over which I have responsibility.
That's interesting. In your short stay here so far, are there other elements that you see in that you'd want to bring out?
Yes, I think there's a couple of elements. Regrettably, in our religious societies since the 50s and the 60s, in all institutions, there has evolved a high distrust of institutions and the churches in particular. And there tended to be a fragmentation of churches as a whole along extreme lines, the right and the left. And over its history, the Methodist Church, along with other mainline bodies, has sort of seen itself as trying to hold things together. And right now, the polarization along the lines of high individualism, focus upon what I want to do. And I see that churches today, and United Methodist Church being one of the main ones here, seeking some way through these kinds of programs, through spiritual development, to maintain what I would call the sense of history, of vocabulary of the faith, of where we have been. There's a strange parallel between the early formation of how William B. Travis called and invited 5 Methodist missionaries to come down to the Texas nation at that time. They were a little delayed in sending them, primarily because of the war that was going on here. They didn't want to get shot at. But when they did come, the first thing they did, and I visited this spot just this last weekend, out of Rudersville, 7 miles out of LaGrange, the formation of a college to educate pastors. And shortly after that period of time, the formation of churches and the outreach in terms of the social programs that Freddie described. And I still see us carrying on that great tradition, trying to hold together in what might be called the radical middle, the sense of corporate identity, family life, community life, and vocabulary of the faith. And I still see us trying to do that, but in today's time as we go into the 90s.
That's how it's surprising to me, but it shouldn't be, really, how important remembering and re-remembering our roots is and are as we progress from day to day. In our remaining couple of minutes here, I was wondering, Bobby Kay, would you, what would you say to other elements or aspects to the outreach program of the First United Methodist Church? Anything in particular?
I guess our main hope at this point is to be a home for people, whether it's people who are, as you say, sort of waking up in their mid-30s and remembering how important the church was to them as children. We want to be a place where those people will come and feel welcomed and can place their children. We want to be a home for the homeless, to help continue meeting that great need as well.
Good. Freddie? Yeah, you have such a diverse background in those 16 years here and covering so many different aspects of the tradition. it's still it's not surprising to me that there's indeed a richness there, because you have seen the field plowed, seeded, and harvested.
Been around to harvest a little bit of it.
Yes, right.
And then been around to go ahead and plow it up again and start the seeding process, etc. And that's the fascinating part, because each new harvest and each new planting time is entirely different. And there is a new experience that is both refreshing and both rewarding, not only from those of us within the church community, but even those outside of the church community, because they are able to sense that we are not a stagnant community. We are not a community kind of set in a mold that can't be reshaped a little bit and moved a little bit, but people feel a real inertia there, something really happening, something that they can feel a part of. And when people can feel a part of something and they have some ownership in that something, then they are able to kind of commit themselves. And they don't do a reluctant commitment, but it's a commitment that says, hey, here I am with both feet flat on the ground, wanting to participate, wanting not only to receive, but wanting to give something back to the community.
That's the impressive thing to me, as we really draw to a close, really, our panel today. I want to thank you, each one of you, Greg, Bobby Kay, and Freddie, for you really opened our eyes to the Methodist presence and concern for the Austin community. On behalf of the Austin Area Conference of Churches, I'm Dick Hudson, inviting you to be with us at this time next week as we continue our series, the Austin Faith Dialogue. Good day.